I've been wanting to make a developer console for a while, and with this project, I have one. So we can enter commands here, like help to get a list of commands, echo to echo some text, which echoes some text. We can clear the terminal console thingy with clear, and we can even quit the application with quit. If you don't want to follow the entire tutorial, this is a GitHub repository. It is linked in the description. You can download it as an add-on, and when you download it as an add-on, all you have to do is take the zip file that you'll download, make sure that you have an add-ons folder, put DevConsole in there, and then go to project settings, plugins, make sure that DevConsole is enabled and that ConsoleManager is enabled as a global. And then you should be good. You should be able to just hit play and open the console with your tilde key or quote left physical, as they say it is. One last little note, I'm making multiple Godot packages at the moment, and I'm probably going to make tutorials for most of them. Here's where you're going to keep up with updates and what exists. This is a Trello board. We have the developer console, and you can see that I've also made a localization package and a menu system. And then anytime that there's an update, I'll put a little checklist here just to show that I am working on something. I'm going to try and design them all as add-ons, so that way you can sort of just pick and choose what you want. And the reason that we're starting with a developer console is that I've made it so that these two already can hook into the developer console and add commands. Basically, I'm making one big starter project, one package at a time. If you don't want to watch the whole tutorial, just go download it. Otherwise, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to make 3 folders. We're going to have commands, we're going to have UI, and we're going to have singletons. And inside commands, I'm going to make a script called command. This command script is effectively going to act as the base class for all of our commands. I'm going to set its class name as command. And whenever we create a command, what we will do is add a child node and just make a new script that inherits from command, and then anything that we put in this command class will be able to be accessed, and any functions can be overridden if we want different behavior, which means that for the different commands, we can have them do different things. For command, we did the class name. We need 4 fields. I'm going to export all of them so we can work on them from the inspector. The first is going to be called command, which might sound dumb. It is a string, which is just going to be the name of the command. It is whatever the first thing that you type is. I'm going to set the default values for these to what they would be for help. So we set a group, also a string. We set this as base, 2 other string variables. The first is going to be help text, which I'm just going to set these as empty for now. And the second one is going to be help text short. So help text, when you call help with a command, that is when we're going to use the help text. And if you just call help, this is going to list out all of the available commands. And so we just want a shorter string so we can make sure that it's on one line. It would probably help if I copy pasted the right format. That's better. The last thing that we want in this class is a function called run command. And this is going to take in arguments, which is an array of strings. And then on the way out, we're going to output a string for our base, which is going to return an empty string. This is all we need in the command class. So we will derive this to make the help command or the echo command or the clear command. But we can also reference these in a group because they will all have these fields and will all be unified under the type of command. When we derive this class, we can change the behavior of run command to output whatever we want. I'm going to make a singleton now. Actually, I'm going to make a new scene, make a node, call this the console manager, and we're going to save this in our singletons folder. And the last thing I want to do really quickly is make a script called ConsoleManager. And we're going to add this as an autoload. So a singleton is a type of class where you have one instance of it and you can reference that from anywhere, but you can only have one. And when we add it to a global, now this is also known as an autoload. it will get added to our scene tree when we start the application. So we can look in remote. We now have a console manager here. It's also important to note that you can't give an Autoload a class name because you will only reference it as the singleton name. So we will reference it as console manager. So the console manager, I want to start by having some signals. We're going to have 2 on console open and signal on console close, used for grabbing focus or controlling input. Okay, I know we're not going to need a process function, but I'm going to leave the ready function for later. There are a few fields that we want. This project is the add-on version, which has a prompt. So when we run this one, you can see a little prompt to open and close the console. I'm not going to go over that. If you download this as an add-on, just go into the console manager and you can decide if you want to show the prompt or not. It's pretty simple. We're going to want to be able to store all of our commands. So I'm going to make a command dict type of dictionary and just start that as nothing. And then we're also going to want to be able to keep track of our commands. So this is going to be an array of strings, which we're just going to start as nothing. And we want to be able to keep track of where we are in that history should we move around it. So we're going to make an index, which is an int, and set it to -1. Since we don't have any history, this would be of length 0 and then -1 to convert it to index space. We'll have some checks in place so that we're never trying to access index -1. In the add-on version, because I don't want people to have to worry about this, I add all of the inputs automatically in the console manager. I'm going to not do that in this tutorial. I'm going to actually go in and add 3 inputs. So we want console open, console up, and console down. And on open, we just want to use the tilde key, which is quote left physical. It's actually a tilde if you hit shift, but I don't feel like it. For up, the up arrow, and for down, the down arrow. That's all of our inputs set up. I want to at least set up 2 functions. So we have add command, which is going to take a command name, which is a string, and a command, which is a command, and it's going to return nothing. This is what we're going to call to add commands to this dictionary. First thing that we want to do is check for duplicates. So if the command dict has our command name already associated with a command, we are going to print a message. I'm just going to copy that over, and then we want to return. Basically, we want to reject this command. Otherwise, we're going to add the command. Command dict and use the command name as the key, and the value is going to be the command. That way we can call this function from anywhere, and whatever command we're adding will get added to our singleton. The other function I want to set up is run command, and this is going to take a raw command string, and it's going to return nothing. And I want to point out that this is different than this. It's going to act as a wrapper. We're going to parse this raw command, and we're going to figure out which command is associated with that raw command, and then set up the args and send it in to whatever command we actually use. Every single command that gets entered, submitted, is going to run through this function. This is effectively the nodal point of this entire package. Now, we can't fully set this up yet because we don't have the actual console to print output to just yet, but there are some things that we can set up. One of those things is our command history. If this function is called, we know that we have submitted a command. So we want to insert the command to the history, or I guess into the history. Command history is, history. We just wanted this history. Dot insert. We're going to do 0 so that the most recent command is at the front of the list, and we want to insert our raw command. The next thing that we want to do is reset our index in the command history. If you've never used a terminal before, this is usually how they're set up. We can then split the raw command. Var command split equals raw command dot split, and here we're going to split on every single space, and we do not want empty items, because that way if you had 2 spaces, you would generate an empty item, and we don't want to have to worry about parsing empty items. So that gets rid of that. The last thing that we want to do in this run command is identify the command. So if command dict has the first item in the command split, which is the 0th item, then we're going to want to print run this, where we'll just copy that. Otherwise, if we could not identify the command, couldn't find that, we either find our command or we don't. So that's pretty simple, but even when we run it now, still nothing is going to show up. We have our inputs, we have some conception of what we're doing, but nothing is going to show up. So let's build out our scene. So the first thing I want to add is a canvas layer. And I'm going to call this the console canvas layer, because that way we can just really easily toggle on and off the visibility of this layer, and all of the UI is going to hide or be shown. Now I want to add a color rect, make this full screen, and I'm going to make it a transparent, maybe like 100 dark gray. Then we want to add a control, and this is going to be called the DevConsole. Again, we're going to make it fill the screen, but this is going to be our DevConsole object. Under this, we're going to add a margin container. Again, fill the screen, and I'm just going to set margins of 100 on all sides. There we go. Under this, I think we just want a panel container. So that is going to be our console. We'll build it out, but this panel is our console, and then you can see that we have a background that the margins expose. In this panel container, we're going to have another margin container. This one, much less margins, just so that the content of this box does not go all the way to the edge of it. And then here we want a vertical box container. We're going to have 3 things in here. We're going to have a control, which I'm going to call the header. We're going to have a scroll rect, or it's called a scroll rect in Unity. It's called a scroll container in Godot. And then we want a panel, and this is going to be called the input panel. So let's build out our header really quick. It will have some text in the top left and a little X to close in the top right. So here we want a horizontal box container. Fill this up, and we want a minimum height of 30 units. Oh, just kidding. This is what we want, to have a minimum height of 30 units. So you want the control node that's called header to have a minimum height of 30 units. And then we have our HBox container. We hit Jigglypuff mains rise up. We want 2 things in here. A panel. In this panel, we are going to set to fill the horizontal space. We also want a button. And this button is going to be our close button. I'm going to make this a little wider. We can throw an X in there. And then I'm going to set our minimum size to be 30 and 30, just so it's a square. In our theme overrides, just to make it look a little less gray, I'm going to populate hover and normal with style box empties. There we go. There we go. And then we can throw a little label, maybe a margin container, make it full, and then throw 5s all around this. And then we can make a label. And we'll just call this the debug/developer console. Make sure that it's vertically aligned in the center. That's effectively the top of our window. One last little thing. I'm going to make this close button unique, so that way we can reference it specifically later down the line. So that's our header. The scroll container, I'm going to rename to command history. This is going to hold our output. Then we want a panel. Let's set this in its layout to expand vertically. So we have our panel. We're going to fill up the entire space. Under that, we're going to have a margin container, because margins are nice. Themes overrides 5, 5, 5, and 5. Okay. And then under this, we're going to have a rich text label. I'm going to rename this to output text. This is where all of our output is going to be for the console, and the way that we have it set up, it will eventually be able to scroll if we have populated too much. So that's the command history and the header. We also want to make this output text unique. So that's the command history and the header. Now we just have our input panel. I'm going to make this a little taller, but I want to set our custom minimum height, which is the Y, to 35. And then we want an HBox container with 2 items. We want a line edit. We forgot to make that fill the space. We want a line edit, which I will set up to expand horizontally. And we want a button. And this button is going to be our submit button. I'm going to rename this to submit button and our text entry. And then both of these should also be unique, so that way we can access them. So that is our dev console. We have all of the parts that we need. Now we can just do the programming of this UI. I'm going to make a script. It's going to be called DevConsole. And this is going, where did we put it? This should go into UI. One last thing, we want our dev console to be a unique name, so that way it's easier to find in our console manager. Before we actually get to programming this, I'm going to set a class name, DevConsole, just so that way in our console manager, we can set up some references. OnReady var DevConsole, which is going to be of type DevConsole, and we're going to reference it DevConsole. Similarly, I'm just going to copy paste this. We want to reference our console layer. It's only nested as the child of the console manager, so I'm just going to reference it normally. We don't need to make it a unique reference. I just don't like the path references once you go a few layers down. And then we can finally go into this ready function, and we want to hide the console on start. Console layer dot visible equals false. That's great. We made the console, but we just set it to not show up at all. So we need to handle that. The way that I'm going to set that up is by taking our input function, which returns a void, and we're not going to be using the event, so just put an underscore in front of it. This is going to be really simple. We just want to first check if we have console inputs in the input map. If the input map does not have the action console open, we want to return. Next, we want to check if the open input was pressed. If input dot action just pressed console open, then we want to toggle visible. That's a function that does not exist yet. I'm going to create it. Function toggle visible takes no arguments, returns nothing. This is a very, very simple function. So the first is we want to actually toggle the visibility. So console layer dot visible equals whatever it was not. And then we want to emit signals. If you remember, right up at the top of this, we have an open and a close signal, useful for handling UI or input or whatever. If console layer is visible, that means that we opened it. So we want to on console, we want to emit the open signal. Otherwise, we're going to emit close. Cool. What it means is now if I go here, we can open the console and close the console. Sweet. Look at that. It is time to write our developer console script. I want to set up 4 references in here, and I'm going to copy them over because I believe the names are the same. And if not, it will yell at me. There's 4 items that we made unique. We have our close button here. We have our output text here. We have our text entry and our submit button. That's all we're going to really need to interact with from this dev console. We don't need a process function. I'm going to add 2 functions really quick. The first is submit command button, which is going to take in no arguments and return nothing, and will pass for now. And then we want submit command text entry. This again is going to return nothing. It will take in, I'll just say text as a string, and we'll make it pass. And that is because when we look at this really quick, there are 2 ways that you could theoretically input a command. Let's say we have a command here. You could either hit enter, which would do the text entry, or you could hit the submit button. So we need to account for both of those cases. The way that we're going to do that is just by hooking up signals from our text entry and our submit button. Connect signals. So for the text entry, we want to connect the text submitted signal. I recommend hard coding these, by the way, just that you never have to worry about them getting disconnected and having to rebuild them. Then in our submit button, we want to connect the pressed signal to submit with a button. One last little signal that is nice to have set up is our close button. We want to connect the pressed signal from this to our console manager's toggle visible function. And we can do that because if the button is visible to be clicked, then that means that we are in the console. So toggling visible would hide it. So when we submit with the button, it's a little more complicated than when we submit here. And that's just because we have the text in the text box to use here. So the first thing that we want to do when we submit with a button is grab our command text. So var raw command, which is going to be a string, equals text entry dot text. Then we only want to run the commands, check for empty strings. If raw command equals an empty string, just return and reject it. Otherwise, we want to clear the text entry. And we want to run the command, which is ConsoleManager.run command raw command. I'm going to change the name of the text entry argument to raw command just to make things a little simpler. And then we can just copy paste that. Sweet. Done with submitting the commands. Now our last function is going to be a print. Console print log text as a string. This is going to also just output a void, and it's super simple. We just want to add text to our output text dot text plus equals, that's plus equals the text that is our argument. And that should be this entire script right here. Because theoretically, if we type in a command, we hit enter. We type in a command, we hit the button. And also it's nice to know that our close button also works. Oh, that's why. That's why. Okay. It is because it was using a comma and then the other object. So it wasn't trying to fill in those placeholders. Okay. So what we can do now is we can use this console print log to actually print output to our console screen. I'm going to copy paste some of this, so I do apologize, but I'll go through it. So if we successfully identify the command, I want to print the raw command right back to the console using DevConsole.print console log with this little caret to just indicate what command we ran. Then we want to run the command and save its output. Because run command here returns a string, we can use that to return whatever is going to be written to the console. I'm going to copy this just so that I get it right, but I'll explain it. We're going to save our output in an output string, and then we're going to match our command, which is the first item in the split of the entire raw command, to a command in the dictionary. We already made sure that it's there, so we just access it, and then we call run command, which is this run command with the rest of the items in the raw command. So this is everything in the split except for the first item because it slices at index 1. And then lastly, we want to actually print that output string to our console. So that is if we can identify the command. What happens if we can't? If we can't, right now we're just saying that we couldn't find it. I'm going to change this to print to the console and just say the command, whatever our command is, was not found, try help. And what this means now, if we type in command was not found, try help. I'm trying to highlight stuff here and I can't, which means that I messed up somewhere and that the output text, we should make text selection enabled. We open the console, type in command, I can highlight stuff. Now we can implement command history. And because we already insert commands to the history when we run them, all we have to do is modify this index and set what is in our input field. What we're going to do here is we're going to confirm that the console is open. If console layer dot visible, only when it's visible will we run the rest of this. We have our two inputs. So we have console up and down, which we're going to reference. So if input dot is action just pressed console up, then we're going to check if we can go up, check if we can ascend the history. So if our command history index is less than the length of the command history -1 to convert this from length to index space, then we can increment index and set input field. We can just take our index, do plus equals 1, and then we can do DevConsole dot text entry dot text equals command history entry at the command history index. This way you can just hit enter as soon as you find this and it will fire off the command again. All right, other input. So if input dot is action just pressed console down, check if we can descend. It's also worth noting that the reason that we can do this is because we're just taking the raw commands before they're processed. So the raw command would be exactly what would be in the text entry. So we check if we can descend. So if command history index is greater than -1, that part's easier. Then we want to decrement and set input field. So command history index minus equals 1. And then if this is -1, then we want to set our text to nothing. We don't have a command in the history at -1. It's not a valid index. So we just let the user write whatever. Otherwise, we can just copy this line. And that should be our history. So if I go in here, we say help 2, help 3, and we can go up through 3, 2, and 1, and then go down to 2, down to 3, and down to nothing. And if we go to 2, we can run it again, and now it's 2, 3, 2, nothing, or a 1. There we go. So that's command history. It's really not that hard to implement. I would argue that it is at this point that we do have a functional console, because we can open the thing, we can type a command, and we fire off input and we get output. So the actual core of what's going on is working, but obviously, like, we don't even have the help command. So it's time that we build some commands. I am going to set this up in such a way that we have a node here, just called base commands. And then in our commands folder, I'm going to make a script called CommandAggregator. This CommandAggregator is going to just sit on this, and it's going to be a very, very simple script. I'm going to steal the class name CommandAggregator. And what does it do? It aggregates commands. So on ready, we're just going to go through and add commands from children. And I'll explain sort of why we're setting this up once I'm done writing this. So for child in get children, if the child is a command, which is exactly why we give this a class name. If the child is a command, then we want to call add command on the console manager with child.command, which is the name of the command from here, and child, just to pass the command reference in. So now anything we add under this base commands object will automatically get added in on ready. I am setting it up this way because I originally had it so that all of the commands were stored in the console manager, and it meant that you had to add the commands every single time you imported a new add-on. Because I have these 3 right now, I didn't want to have to go through and take files and drag them into this scene every single time. So each one of those modules has their own command aggregator with the commands for it underneath. That way you can just load in the add-on and it will automatically add the commands. I'm going to make 5 folders here. Help, echo, clear, exit, and quit. Oh, that is not pronounced that way. Okay. So now it's time that we actually just develop the commands. The help command is arguably the most important one. It is also going to be the hardest one for us to do. So I'm going to add a node. We're just going to call this help. I'm going to make it a scene. Probably name these better, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it like this. And when we go into this scene, I'm going to create a new script called help that inherits from command. So we can just go here, steal this signature, put it there. You can also see that when we have this selected, we have these fields. Now, help is already the default value and it's a base command. So that part's fine. I'm going to steal the help text and the short text from the add-on project. The help text is just, well, it seems like you know what this function does. And the short one just says prints a list of commands and their functions. And we're going to need to fill these out for every command that we have, just so that help has some content to show. The actual help command has 2 use cases. The first is just help, which prints all of the available commands and their short texts. And then we have help with a command which just prints help text for the one command. So how are we going to get all of that out of just this? Well, we have arguments coming in, so we can check if we have an argument or not. And then we just build the text and we return it. If the length of our arguments is greater than 0, this means that we have this case. So we want to check if we have a valid command. ConsoleManager.command.dict.has. And then we want the first argument. So if we have it, then we want to steal the command. We're going to steal the command by referencing it like this. So we're going to get the command associated with the first argument, and then we are going to return. This is a 2-part string in which we get the command value, which is again the name of the command, as well as the command help text. Otherwise, if the console manager does not have a command associated with that argument, we just want to tell the user unknown command cannot help, and then we'll throw in that argument. So that is the first case, or that, I guess this is the second case. It's the one where we have a specific command. Otherwise, all the code paths here are going to return, so we can just start typing here. We want to make a return string. Return string equals that. Actually, let's populate this. Type help to see this list. I'm going to set these to carets. Okay. So that's going to be the start of our string. And then this is going to put some space in between this line and each of the commands. So for key in our command dict, for every command in this, we're going to get a command. I did not need to put that there. All right. So we'll get our command from the command dictionary, and then we just want to add a line to the return string. So return string plus equals, that's going to be our group. This is going to be the name of our command, and that's going to be the short help string with that new line at the end. We can populate this with command.group, command.command, and command.help text short. Then we just want to add an ending message. So return string plus equals, an extra line, so that way there's a gap, kind of like at the top, and type help command for more information about a specific command /n. And then we can just return the return string. All right, so we save that. We should see now that help gets added to our list of commands, which means that we should be able to run it. There we go. I'm going to really quickly fix that. There's not supposed to be a comma there. Not a real command. Type help. We get help, which this is the full case. If we want the specific case for one command, we can do help. Seems like you already know how to use this command. Help displays a list of available commands and what their functions are. So there we go. That's both cases of help. This is the most complex command that we're going to be going over today. It's pretty simple, but the other ones are really like egregiously simple. Let's do echo. We want to add another node, call it echo. We're going to make it a scene. And then in this scene, again, we are going to make a script. Luckily, we only have one case for echo, and that is we take all of the arguments after and we just print them right back out. We want to make a return string, so our return string, and then for arg in args, we want to go through every single one and add it to the return string. We're going to add it with a space. So this will insert it into the string, and then we add a space to undo the split from earlier. And then this is just arg. And then we want to add a new line character at the end. And that should be the whole command. Except, watch this, we already have a command name help. You can probably guess what I forgot. We forgot to set all of these. So we want this to be called echo. and I'm just going to copy our help texts, which is basically just, it will repeat back the text. So here we go. We did not get the error. So we type help. We also get the echo command now. We type help echo, repeats whatever text inputted after echo back to the console. So echo some text, spits back some text. If we just do echo, that's all we got. And then you can see that it added another line. That's echo. I would say this is easier than help. And I would say that the other three are even easier, and you'll see what I mean. So let's add clear. I'm going to add another node, call this clear, make it a scene. The reason I'm making everything a scene is so that you could theoretically add or remove these at runtime or just according to preference. Go into this clear scene. Once again, I'm going to copy that clear, new script, call it clear. We just make sure that they extend command, and then we have our run command. We are going to return nothing because we want to clear the output of the console. Let me just steal these from the other project. And this is actually like really simple. So we just take our console manager, then we reference our DevConsole, and then we reference our output text, and then we reference its text and set it to nothing. Incredibly easy command. So if we type in help, clear now shows up. We can get the specific text for clear. If we do clear, boom. So if we do help a few times, so that way we have to scroll through it, we can type clear, and it's all gone. So now we have 3 commands. Look at that. We went from 1 command to 3 commands in a couple of minutes. So now let's add the last 2. We'll do them one at a time. The first one is exit, which following the same process, make it a scene, go into that scene, make a script, copy that. There we go. For exit, I do want to just say exited console. New line. I'm going to steal the moon. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm going to steal those help texts again. Exit. And we want to actually exit the console. Now, the good thing is you can only run commands while the console is open. So kind of like the close button, we can just assume that the console is open, call ConsoleManager.toggleVisible, and it'll close it. So now if we type help, we have exit. We can type help exit for the text. Ooh, haha, little cheeky error. I got the texts wrong. So let's set that back up. Here we go. Help closes the console. Exit closes the console. We can bring it back up and you can see that we exited the console. Help exit. There we go. Type exit to return to previous menu or game. Last command for the day. This is quit. So we add another node. We call it quit. We make it a scene. Boom. We go into it, select it. We make a new script. Now, we want it to again inherit from command. Let me steal the help text and the short help text. Quit. And we're going to be quitting the game, so I'm actually not going to return a message at all here. And if you don't know how to quit the entire application, that's how you do it. GetTree.quit. So here we go. Help. Now we have all 5 commands. Help, quit. Quit, type quit to close the application. Okay, quit. And it closes. Look at that. Let's do a little demo. Make sure that this is all working. So help. Actually, no. Command. I don't know what a terminal is. Help. Okay, here are the commands that we have. Help, echo. Echo some text. There we go. We can clear, we can exit, and if we open it again, we can quit. All right. I would say that is a working console with our 5 base commands. I want to once again just shout out this Trello board for the packages. If there's a GitHub repository for it, at least the version 1 is done. If it's here, it's pretty much done. If you just want the add-on, I don't know why you watched the whole thing, but just download the add-on. There's a little setup guide, base commands, how to add an aggregator, how to add commands to an aggregator, our signals, and the little prompt, which we didn't go over, and it really doesn't need to be gone over. Other than that, I I also have a Patreon, which if you want to support me, this is the first place that I post the add-ons, but The GitHubs are public, and you don't even need to be a member to see these posts, so they're not exclusive in any way. It's just, if you want to be able to input on them, this is probably the place. Or down in the comments on this video. All right, if you want more Godot tutorials, this is a playlist. If I've uploaded any more, they'll be in this playlist too. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Peace.